I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Camilla.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Chris Yee.
And today we're reviewing Arborea, which I always, for some reason, I cannot remember the name of this game. But I'll tell you what I don't forget is how the game looks. Because you look at this cool cover, and then you look at the board, and you've seen all the colors of the spectrum in existence.
Yes.
My goodness. And in many of the different shades and stuff, it's a bright game. When you said, I'm really looking forward to this one, I thought, checks out.
It does. Well, you know what, though? That did attract me. Wendy made some weird comment several years ago about how beige attracts her, and I don't get it. You think you would wear more beige.
It's not my color.
But colorful stuff attracts me. So I was very much attracted to this. But it's a pretty hefty Euro game, and here's a little bit of how it plays. So it looks like there's a ton going on here, but let's concentrate on the main part of the game, or at least how we score. Everyone's going to start with one of these cards here, and as the game goes by, you're going to collect cards on a board in front of you, and these cards are going to need resources. You'll pay those resources, and then you're going to be adding by putting this next to or on your board, and you're doing this with the goal of getting monsters who, when you put them on different intersections on your board, are going to score, usually for the color that matches them, and you have a little scoring card for reference. So that's kind of your end goal, is to do that. It's the how you do it that makes this game interesting. A lot of what's going on is out here. So on a player's turn, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to place someone from your village on one of these 4 spots. It shows you right here. You'll place them on that spot. I'm going to place them laying down so you can see it a little more easily. And you have different kinds of people. You have these little junior dudes. These are your elders, and then you can also have veterans who can be placed. But you can place one, or you can push one of these like this. As the game goes by, these are going to be pushed, and when it gets here, then this tile comes and goes here. Whenever a tile is pushed, and at the beginning of your turn, you can choose to push one, or you can place a worker. At the end of your turn, every track that you're on will be pushed one. And whenever a track is pushed, then every player, and that's not just the player whose turn it is, every player has the ability to jump off on either side. There's 2 sides of each spot. The farther you go, the better those sides get. So at the beginning of your turn when you push, you can jump off, and at the end of your turn when you push, you can jump off. But people can always wait because, like I said, it gets better as you go through. Now, I said that you can push a tile or you can place a worker. You can do that action twice if you pay 3 spirit. As the game goes by, you'll be getting and losing spirit, and at the end of the game, you're going to lose or gain points depending on where your spirit is. But if you want to take an action twice, you can do so. If when you place a worker, there is a symbol for winter, spring, summer, fall there, you will move up that track down here. There are 4 tracks that will be randomly determined at the beginning of the game, and you move up on these, and each of these is going to give you points at the end. For example, this will give you 2 points for every water tile in your domain. However, if you get to it before, that's 4 times 2, so it would be 8 points for every water tile in your domain. After you do this, you can have 2 people who have jumped off paths, whether they happen to do it at the beginning of your turn or on other people's turns or on your last turn, whatever. You can make them run down their path all the way till they get to the end. And when you do that, you're going to get every action on that path. Now there are 8 different paths here. I'm not going to show you what they all do, but in this one, for example, this one's going to bring out another green monster. It's going to give me 3 of the pink resources, and it's going to activate a gift with the sage that's right here next to me if I have one. Now, I don't have a gift there, but as the game goes by, I have the possibility of giving gifts to sages. I could even give them 2. If that's 2, whenever I hit this spot, I get to take 2 of these actions. Look at the top one. It gives me 2 spirit. This one lets me capture an animal. This gives me a purple resource. And this one only works if I'm using one of the little guys, whether it's a young guy or the veteran. And then I can move up 1 on the spring bonus track. So that happens here. These are resources. These bring out monsters. The resource track is really fascinating. So in that case, I got 3 pink resources. So in that case, I go 1, 2, 3. Let's say with someone else my turn, I also got 2 orange resources. And I move them up like that. Now on my turn, I might want to spend these resources by buying cards. So let's say, for example, there was a purple resource. And on my turn, I want to build this card. It costs 1 pink, 1 orange, 1 purple. I pay 1 pink, I pay 1 orange, I pay 1 purple. It pushes the whole thing down. Now, at the end of my turn, anything I haven't spent, I get all these points. That's 6 points. And then the bottom half comes up to attach. Here I get 3 points for the orange one, and that comes up to attach. However, on future turns, I have now given these resources to other players, or maybe even myself. Water is the most points, although you can spend a water as a wild resource if you need to. So if there's none of that resource available. So there's all kinds of resources. When you gain resources, you can do so either for points or just to spend them on your turn. The different monsters are placed out here on these tracks, and placing out monsters will give you a bonus tile or bonus that's on them, which is usually points and or spirit. When you capture monsters, you'll capture them here, and that's how you put them in your area. These tracks here let you recruit your veterans and your young people, and this is pretty important. This is important because when your elders come back, they always come back to this spot. This is the spot where you can place people on the board from. If you have no one there, you can't place anyone. But when your elders come back and when your younglings come back, they come back to these spots, and I'll need to take actions to bring them down to use them again. Now, you might wonder what's the difference between elders and these younglings. When elders are on those tracks, the tracks move 2. I guess they know how to surf better. They move the tracks by 2 spots. These guys move it by 1 for each one that you have on it. Lots of different spots here on the board, too. I want to mention these spots up here because that's how you get more cards. At the beginning of the game, the cards are split into different decks, and you can take a card off the top of these decks and try to work on them. The more resources on the top of the pile, the more difficult that card is to get. But whenever you build a card, you get all these bonuses at the top. This lets me recruit another veteran. This one gives me a favor with the green sage and gives me 3 spirit. But then on the back are the resources you paid, are the different types of terrain that it is. Every time you put a monster on the board over here, you're also going to be moving the sun forward. And this is a way to keep track of when the game ends. When it gets to the end, everyone gets 2 last turns. Points are going to be scored from, well, as I mentioned, the way you have your monsters in here, you can score a lot of points. You're going to get points from where you are on these different bonus tracks. You'll get points where you are on the spirit, or lose points possibly. And you will probably, hopefully, have gotten points during the game by getting resources that you didn't spend. And whoever has the most points is the winner. So, talking about the color, I personally, well, before I get to color, I personally don't love the little containers in the game. I feel like they're hard to put your fingers in and get the pieces out. That's a minor thing, I suppose. And that might even only be in the Kickstarter version. I'm not sure.
You talking about the cardboard ones?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I like those. Okay.
The monster ones are fine. The player ones are not, because it like just jams in there. So you have to dump them out, and then if you dump them out, you dump out all 5 colors.
Yeah, you have to like something to top it over to dump it out.
Did it hold them in? Like if you put it on its side?
Just don't shake the box.
Okay.
But that's minor. I'm glad that they had those. I also want to say a nice shout out. I thought this was a fairly involved game, and I think the rule book does a decent job at teaching it. I call out bad rule books. I thought this one was fine.
It's almost harder to call out the good ones because a good one doesn't get in its own way. So it's easier to kind of just like, it's neutral, but really no, it's a positive.
And it's hard. You don't want to be like, yay, you did your job, you know? Like it's so demeaning. It's like, no, I truly mean it. Yay, I'm not patronizing.
I do think like the colors are really pretty, and I love that pinky purpleness. I do feel like the iconography is a lot smaller than it should be on the board, especially because it's a tall board, and so it's hard to see. I just have bad eyes, but it's hard to see at the end of that board to be like, what are those icons in that top track?
I definitely agree. I found the icons to be too small, and I really am with you, Tom. I love the look of the board. I like the bright colors. I love the world that it's creating. I think that comes through really well on the board. However, I think that detracts from being able to see, 1, because they're small, but 2, just because it is so saturated in color, the different icons. I wish the background was maybe a little bit more muted so that those placement spots would really pop and you can visually see what's going on quicker.
Yeah. I might have preferred 2 boards. Make the big board with the paths a big board in the middle of the table, and then have a sideboard for the tracks and the sideboard for the monsters. That's not as important. That stuff's to the side. This game has some spatial issues because you don't know how big your garden's going to get. You can play with a fairly small one. You can play with a long one. It doesn't matter. So the game is going to take up a lot more space, but I love the colors. It doesn't bother me at all. I think it's fantastic, and they also look brighter on camera than they are in person, which is going to make them look worse, but you're right. The icons are tiny, and because of that, and as much as I think the rulebook does a good job, this is a hefty one for me to teach. Because I not only need to teach how to play the game, I need to say, okay, do you want cards? That's here. Do you want more people? That's here. Do you want resources? They're over here. There's where they are.
Right.
Now, once you play, you get all that stuff down. After a while, you learn, okay, this is there's 8 branches. Which branch am I going to jump on the surfboard? I can't get the surfboards out of my mind. But I call them
monorails. And get on the monorail. We're jumping off, kids. Hold on tight.
It's a tough thing to teach.
I do appreciate, though, that they are well sectioned. If you had a branch that just had tons of random stuff and it wasn't coordinated, that would be so hard. But because it's organized and it does have the 8 regions and each region has its specialty, I appreciate that.
There's generally one place to go for something, which does help when this is a very kind of combo-tastic game. Mm-hmm. It does help that is organized really well. I would agree.
So the main mechanism here, after I was done playing, I was like, this reminds me of Tzolk'in. Because in Tzolk'in, you put your little dudes on a wheel, and the wheel slowly ticks, and then you jump, you wait and wait and wait until you get to the good stuff, or you can't wait, you take the worse stuff. This is the same way. You get on these monorails, surfboards, whatever we call them, these sliders, and you jump off. But the difference, and in fact, to me, I think it's an improvement on Tzolk'in in that way, is that it moves so fast. Like, you get on those things and you move. You still jump off early sometimes because sometimes you just need to get somebody off and get some stuff going. But I like the fact that they move.
It's fascinating because you have to jump off when it moves. You can't just jump off later at the beginning of your turn. And so sometimes you're balancing of, do I think someone else is going to come to the same track as me? Because I want to get farther, but also if I can't jump off before my next turn, then I've wasted a whole turn and I have to wait a whole nother time. And so I simultaneously like it and don't like the way that it's different from Tzolk'in because I can't just be like, ooh, I like where I'm at. Now let me take it off.
Unless you, on the start of your turn, and I appreciate this flexibility, this is a great design decision where you can just move a track forward instead of putting out a worker, so that in that situation, we're like, I should have jumped off of that progress track monorail, on Tom's turn, and now it's mine. Well, I'll just bump it forward, and now I'm at an even better space.
Right. For a game that has so much engine building, because you're not just building one kind of engine, you're constantly building and rebuilding your engine and kind of getting a worker out there to get something which is going to pay over here. For something like that, it offers a lot of flexibility, because it's a little engine building, a little programmy kind of, but with that, it doesn't feel so tight that you never have anything to do. You're kind of constantly building towards something, and there's ways to do it, and the flexibility so that you don't feel like I messed myself up. I'm out of the game for the next 2 turns until I catch back up.
Right. A thought that I have about this is that a lot of people complain about just point salad games. Everything you do in this game, everything you do in a certain game, 2 points here, 3 points there. This one kind of has that in a few ways, but it feels very fresh compared to a lot of other things, a lot of other games. I think because of that shared resource pool. Those tracks where on my turn I generate a bunch of resources, I move up this top half of the marker, and then if I haven't spent those resources at the end, I just collect all these points as the bottom part catches up. Yes, that is technically a point salad thing. Oh, I collected 3 orange and 2 blue and a purple, and I just made like 17 points. Like, that feels awesome. But then there's this weird shared incentive thing where now I've made a bunch of resources, and as we go around, other people get to spend them.
Yeah.
I really like that. That was a big, hey, this is a great sounding idea. How is it actually in execution? And I think it's wonderful.
It's fantastic. I really like that idea too. Again, back to that flexibility where it's like you can get all these resources. Well, then do you use them or do you leave them to collect those points? And if you leave them and collect the points, other people can use them, but you also need them, so do you go ahead and sacrifice those points to build out, so that again, you have a place for your monster, that flexibility. And I think you have that same feeling also with the spirit track, when it doesn't feel good to be in the negative points of the spirit track, but you realize pretty quickly in the game that is a resource to use. And to go negative isn't that bad. You can get it back. I mean, you can go from -2 to +6, back to -5 to +10, in just a couple turns. And I love that turnover. I love that it is such a rich resource in the game.
I was going to wonder how you feel about that, Tom, because you don't always like going in debt, or you don't like...
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, it's so easy to get spirit. I like this game. I like that spirit track. I think it would be difficult to end a game in the negative, and I think the negative is there just to keep you from being like, on my final turn, I will spend all the spirit, and I will do this and that. And you don't want to do that because you're like, I can't afford to get -20. I would be amazed if someone ever took -20 like on purpose. I mean, why would you do that? But like, you have to have some major thing. But I at first I was like, oh, I'm not spending spirit. By like turn 3 of my first game, I was like, I'll spend it when I want to, because you can spend it a lot and you want to do it. But I like that this is not a multiplayer solitaire game at all. The shared resource pool and the fact that you are moving other people on those slides, that you're really involved. I want that monster, and you're constantly helping other people out. But what makes it, you're doing that, but at the same time, you get so many fun things. Every time you move down a track, you're like, dun, 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 dun. I saw on those long tracks, I get all that cool stuff. And once you get those sages up and those favors, and it feels even better. You're like,
really cool.
This guy, I get 2 favors of these 4 choices. Oh, and then you finish a card. You're like, ooh, this card's done. And I'm going to do that, and that. You can have like amazing turns.
Yeah.
There are definitely turns, as a negative, I think there are some turns that can get away from you a little bit, where you're progressing down this track and then you get this thing, and all of a sudden you get a bonus that says, put a new worker out, so you're thinking about that, and then you start working on your second work and you realize, I haven't finished firing off the first work. There's like, I think all of us have done that at some point.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. It's a thinky game. It could be prone to AP, but despite all of that, it's not hard to kind of correct a turn if you're like, whoops, forgot to do this part of it. You're like, bah, 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 bah. Okay, we're all squared up now, right? We're all good. It's, man, there's a lot going on, and you can kind of get lost in it, but if you just choose to say, well, I'll just go with the flow, and I'll just see what happens as I play this, and get used to it, and play it enough to the point where you can plan out and be strategic without it bogging down the game, you'll be rewarded with a very fun play experience up to that point. And then when you're playing with people who are familiar with it, man, there's a lot of, because of those points of interaction, there's a lot happening in this game that's good.
It is one of those that, I would just pull levers at the beginning. I would just make choices. And
sure, and it takes
all
a while.
those tracks are good. There's not a bad track.
You usually start at the top, because those things look better, and then you're like, oh, but I need resources. They're in the bottom. What's your rating?
I struggled with this one because I feel very hot and cold. I really love the gameplay. Everything about the gameplay just sings. It's so smooth. But the graphic design, again, the icons being too small and it just punching you in the face with color, sometimes it makes it hard to see those icons that are already hard to see. So I'm going to come in at an 8. Gameplay, my score is much, much higher than that, but I think that would be something that would make it more difficult to get to the table, make it more difficult to teach, is the whole, there's no player aids in it, to where, where do I go to get this again? Oh, that's that symbol. What's this symbol do again? Yes, there's the turn order on your own little player board so you can see it, but it's missing a couple steps, it feels like. And so I just felt because of that, it got a little clunky and got in its way the actual gameplay. Those are super easy fixes. This is one that they just tweaked a couple things. I mean, it would easily be gameplay, probably a 9 for me. But just those things do get in the way a little bit and pull it back. So I'm going to come in at 8.
I'm going to come in at a 7.5. I like a lot what's going on in the game. Sorry. I like a lot what's going on in the game. I do agree, like the icons, they're rough and whatever. The way that you move on the tracks, I enjoy it. I enjoy that interaction. At the same time, there's that part of me that wants a little more multiplayer solitaire. There's a little part of me that wants a little bit more control. But I think at the end of the day, like Camilla said, what Camilla said is just
I'll take it.
that the icons made me really struggle with the game. Like I really had trouble seeing that, and so that reduced my gameplay enjoyment. I do wonder with more plays if this would end up being higher as I got used to it. And I was just like, okay, I know exactly what all that stuff is. And there are games that I have come to love because of that. But at the end of the day, right now it's 7.5. I could see it maybe growing on me. I'm not sure though.
Oof. I'm also struggling. I think I have the exact same struggle that you have. I disagree. I love how interactive this game is. I don't need to be any less multiplayer.
To me, and I love multiplayer solitaire. Let me be very clear that that's not a bad word to me. But this was a little refreshing, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with an 8.5
All right.
because
What happened?
it's a struggle, right? Because
Yeah.
like you said, the
was right
production,
there.
I feel like the board space is a little bit mismanaged, where you have a very big picture of a very cool looking spirit. That's awesome. All of the other symbols could have been a little bit, everything could have just been laid out a little bit nicer. Like you said, the round player aid walks you through like the 4 steps of it. It doesn't it doesn't have a step laid out that's like, also place out your animals, complete there's like a few parts of the end of your turn that just aren't there.
Right.
Like there's some weird things. But at the end of the day, I can figure that out. I can remember that even in my first game. So it's not such a production issue that I think it flubs the game. So it's an 8.5. The game is so fun. It is so tight in the right moments that it needs to be tight, but also gives you enough flexibility that you can say like, I didn't think I could pull this off, but if I, and then I could, bam, I pulled off what I wanted to do and more. And I love that. It makes you feel clever, and that's one of my favorite things in a game like this. So it's an 8.5 for me.
As you all know, I hate Euros, but I love this game. I love the gameplay. So I'm giving it a 9. I would have actually given it higher. My biggest negative with the game is I think endgame scoring is hard for people to process. I was like, why can't all the monsters just be 3 points for each area they're next to? That would have just simplified that so much. Why is this monster 3 points for each area it's next to? This one's 2, but also gets it for the straight line. I'm like, just make them all 3 points what they're next to, and it would have been a simpler, easier process to go through.
And then the water on top of that. Well, these 3 are doubled, but these 2 aren't. Like, I want to just be like 5 times something, go.
Yeah, and also, but even the tracks. So in-game score is a little wonky, so otherwise I give it higher, but everything else about it I love. Yes, I completely understand the problems with the iconography and all that stuff, but man, once I'm immersed in this game, I'm just immersed. I am interested the whole game. Even if Chris is doing a really long turn, I'm watching A to make sure he doesn't cheat. I jest about that, but I'm also watching when he moves those tracks.
Yeah.
I'm always like, am I jumping off? Are you going to move the track? What resources are you getting? Ooh.
You're making so many decisions on other people's turn.
Now, that being said, as with many Euro games, I think this one goes to 5, which is insanity. Does it go to 5? Yeah, it goes to 5. And I probably won't play it at 4. 3 and 2 are such. 3 is a great sweet spot because the things move around. I might play it at 4. 5, are you kidding me? I almost want to throw away a set of components so that it doesn't happen. Like I want to leap across the table. But I think that about a lot of Euro games. But this one, I went into it because of the bright colors. But I really wasn't expecting a lot because there's a lot of games with bright colors. In fact, this one looks a lot like Batoku, which is also very brightly colorful.
Yeah.
But this one, to me, they're the same theme, and that's about it. This one blows it out of the water. This one, I'm like, wow, everything here is so much fun.
Really?
So
one thing I realized my 7.5 sounded really negative. It's like I liked this game. I liked what was going on. I liked the workers, how you had the big workers, the little workers. Some would move the track double, some would move it single. Like I think that there's a lot of really good design decision in here. So I want to make that very clear. Like I liked Arborea.
I mean, 7.5 is a good score.
It is a good score, and it's
Yeah.
just so funny because you guys are like so high, and I know you would be so high, and so I just wanted to talk about my
Apologize.
difference instead of what I did
Publicly
like. So I
apologize.
do like this. I did think it was fun.
Imagine giving a 9.5 in a review where the other 3 people are 10s.
Never
Hates
happened.
this game, but he hates Arborea.
anyway, that's Arborea. That's this game. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Camilla.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Chris Yee.
Arborea. Arborea.
Arborea?
Who
Arborea. Dun, gung, 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 gung.